Drugs. We've all seen them used in movies or TV shows, and we've all seen them used in one way or another. Many of us have seen them used so nonchalantly as if they won't affect the way a person functions. These perceptions, however, are wrong. The abuse of drugs and alcohol causes many horrible consequences on people and can in many cases lead to death. Once an addiction to drugs and alcohol is started, it can take years and even a lifetime to recover. The addiction and abuse of drugs and alcohol needs to be prevented and stopped for all humans' well-being. The problem. Drug addiction is a chronic brain disease that causes a person to constantly need to provide themselves with drugs or other substances despite the harmful effects it is having on their bodies. According to Addiction Center, about 20 million Americans over the age of 12 have a drug addiction. Alcoholism is the brain disease or the association of the serious need for alcohol despite the harmful effects as well. According to the National Institution of Alcohol Abuse and Alcoholism, about 17 million Americans have AUD or alcohol use disorder. There are many causes to both of these horrible things. Peer pressure being one of the most well-known begins at a young age. About 90% of people who claim to be, who are proven to be drug abusers or are abused to a certain substance claim that they became addicted and began smoking and drinking when they were under the age of 18 because of their peers. Illicit drug abuse is highest among 18 to 25-year-olds, and because children at a younger age haven't fully developed their brains yet, they aren't fully capable of making decisions for themselves and tend to just go with the flow and go with what all their friends are doing. Hostile environments can also cause these addictions because sometimes when a family is abusive towards their child, they can see drugs as a way out of this abuse, and it can help them feel better. There are also neighborhoods, like ghettos, where drugs are easy to obtain and easy to keep obtaining, so they just become addicted and keep using them. Economic issues can also lead to these addictions because many people, when they hit a rut or go into a poorer state of life, they resort to selling drugs and become addicted to them themselves. What happens in many cases is people start meth houses. Genetics. According to dual diagnosis, genetics are responsible for 40 to 60% of the predisposition an addict carries towards substance abuse. Many times what happens is a parent or parents both drink, and then the child sees that as the only way there is, and they become an alcoholic themselves or a drug abuser. Depression is also an obvious cause of these addictions. One of the most common drug addictions because of depression is antidepressants, but depression can also cause a need for gateway drugs, which can lead to even worse addictions. Through the multiple causes of drug and alcohol addiction, there are many effects that follow. One of the most common effects is family troubles. Families can be torn apart and many families resort to violence to solve their problems, and divorce and abuse. According to Learn About Alcoholism, 40 to 60% of battered women reported that their husbands were heavier problem drinkers, and half of divorces are due to substance abuse. When a family member or a parent or both become alcoholics or drug abusers, it endangers the children because they are very rash and violent in their decision making, and the child could also become an addict themselves. Economic status is a horrible effect of these addictions too. Many people, when they become an alcoholic or addicted to drugs, they lose their job because they are late to work, or they have no more work ethic, or they just have a bad attitude in the workplace. This leads to financial hardships, which unfortunately leads to worse drug addiction. One of the worst things that can happen because of your economic status is that you could become homeless. According to nationalhomeless.org, 38% of homeless people were dependent on alcohol, and 6% were dependent on other drugs. Death. It's an obvious effect of drug addiction and alcoholism. Depending on a person's body, cocaine could kill them in their first use, or it could kill them 10 years later after their 100th use. According to the National Institution of Alcohol Abuse and Alcoholism, 80,000 people died from alcohol-related cases in 2014, and alcohol accounted for 31% of all driving fatalities. According to the National Institution of Drug Abuse, 53,000 people died from overdose in 2015. While there are so many negative effects to drug and alcohol abuse, there are ways to prevent these tragedies. Help centers. are a great way for people to learn to recover. Financial hardships, as I said earlier, could have been easily avoided if they had just gotten help when they needed it. There are thousands of centers over the United States, but sadly few people go to them because they are stubborn or think they don't need help, or they just don't know that they need help. These centers, however, have helped millions of people kick their addictions. Support groups. They're an easier way for people who don't want to go to help centers but still want help. They're people in your community who you know and will see you every day getting better and better. Friends and family is also a good solution. Sometimes all people need is one friend to step in and say it's time to stop and it's time to get help. Interventions by friends and family is a great way to help people. And alcohol rehab says that children with higher self-esteem are less likely to succumb to peer pressure. So if family members were more kind and set goals for their children to become better people, then their self-esteem would rise and they would become less likely to succumb to peer pressure. Hitting bottom. It's a term used by addicts when they realize that there is nowhere else they can go. They've hit the lowest point in their life and there is only up. It's one of the hardest ways to realize that you need help, but sometimes it is necessary. Now that I have told you some of the solutions to drug and alcohol addiction, will you do your part in helping society? I want each and every one of you to think about your friends and family and try to think about that one person who you know that needs help with an addiction, be it drugs, alcohol, smoking, or anything else. Now think, how can I help them? Think, how can I become a better person by helping them become a better person? Well, I just showed you how. By being a friend and stepping in when they need you most, by creating community groups to help keep streets safe for all, or even by volunteering at a help center in your area, you can be a great help to those in need. Drug and alcohol addiction is a sickness, and there is a cure. The question is, are you willing to work for it?